In loot box news, Nintendo is the latest company to be sued over its loot box mechanics. So this is something we've definitely seen in a lot of video games. For those of you unfamiliar, in video games, you can often buy these things that are loot boxes, but you don't necessarily know what's in it. You know sort of the type of thing that's in it, but not the specific thing. And the idea is that you are basically taking a chance on which specific item it is. And maybe it'll be an ultra rare, super cool item that you can't get any other way. So, take your chances on this mechanism. If this sounds suspiciously like gambling, it's suspiciously like gambling, but you can't cash out what you get. So it's distinct from gambling, or so the argument has gone. Anyway, we are suing Nintendo for their particular version of the loot boxing. So let's learn a little bit more about this particular lawsuit and some of the issues involved. Let's get started with this. An under 18 gamer with support from a guardian is suing Nintendo over the company's loot boxes that charge real money for a chance at what they perceive to be at least an advantage. So yeah, sometimes you're buying it for mechanics, sometimes you're buying it for some sort of costume, sometimes you're buying it for a weapon or a shield or some armor or something. But yeah, you're taking a chance that you'll get the really, really cool items. Anyone can win. Maybe it can be you. The class action lawsuit was originally filed last month, but has now been moved to the federal system. So they have removed it, as we call it. The lawsuit claims that Nintendo in particular engaged in deceptive and illegal practices through the transaction it sold to players of its mobile game, Mario Kart Tour. So Nintendo has somewhat, and not enough in my mind, got involved in the mobile market. I think Nintendo is squandering a bit of an opportunity in the mobile market. I think they could absolutely crush and dominate all mobile gaming. But for some reason, they've been a little bit resistant to this. They've only very tentatively dipped their toes in the water when they could absolutely crush everyone before their wake. But they're not doing that. But they have released the Mario Kart Tour. What they've done, apparently, is entice players to pay actual money for a chance-based game that is absolutely not gambling, even though it's chance-based. And the plaintiffs have alleged the company did something immoral, unethical, oppressive, unscrupulous, and or substantially injurious to the consumers. They've also specifically alleged that this is all in violation of Washington State Consumer Protection Act, which every state has some version of, because, consumers, we want to protect the consumers when it comes to business practices. That sounds like a good thing, and we think this violates that law. For years, the Mario Kart Tour has been a freemium offering that's been popular, employed a, let's say, luck-based system that would entice users to roll dice, and depending on which way the dice comes up, you might win one prize, or you might win a different prize. And sometimes the prizes are really, really nice. And that's not gambling, though. Pulling on the spotlight pipe, which is in no way like pulling the arm of a slot machine, would release gliders, carts, or characters at random that could potentially improve performance in the game. Each pull of this, not in any way a slot machine, not in any way the arm of a slot machine, would cost about $3. The resulting loot box could feature prizes, but has been somewhat derided as predatory because, you're putting real money into the device where you pull the pipe that, depending on the roll of the dice, gets you some prize. Sometimes it's really valuable. Won't you just take a chance on this totally not a slot machine gambling device? Nintendo discontinued the pipe pulling slot mechanism in 2022, replacing it with a more straightforward in-game store. So they got away from the not at all a slot machine with a not at all arm on a slot machine and said, what if we just have a normal in-game store where people can buy things? And other companies have also done this as well because, there's been a few of these lawsuits against a few of these companies for the somewhat looks kind of like gambling, but, it's totally okay, even though it primarily affects the children, incidentally. So unregulated gambling with children being the primary players, raises a few question marks in one's mind. Um, but before the not at all a slot machine thing was cut off, the lawsuit states that the plaintiffs, again, who are children, charged $170 on their dad's credit card without permission for the loot boxes. Yeah. Of course, there are well documented cases that rake up significantly higher bills into the thousands and occasionally tens of thousands of dollars because, it's not like there's any sort of data or information that some people are particularly attracted to gambling based devices, and some people put money in a slot machine in a way that suggests a complete lack of self-control, and that some people are really have, we might even call it an addiction, problems related to gambling. And that's not all no problem in any way, even though it involves the children, who of course are particularly susceptible to influence and have less reasoning capability than adults. So, but we don't have any information that's anything like that. Uh-huh. Nintendo apparently yielded $300 million in 3 years through this not gambling scheme. So the not gambling scheme was pretty good for the house. $100 million each year for 3 years for the totally not gambling with the children. I'm seeing some potential problems and potential notes of concern. I have notes. I have some notes. Plaintiffs, of course, almost never received the super valuable item that they totally could win, but they almost never did because, unsurprisingly, the slot machine doesn't pay a jackpot every single time. But it's not a slot machine, guys. And would not have made the amount of in-game purchases had they known the true odds, and they would not be given a refund. So, every slot machine probably should post the odds, but it's not a slot machine, so we don't need to tell you. Also, it's not addictive in any way, and it's okay. Nothing to look at here. This, of course, is not the first lawsuit relating to this. Google, Apple, Valve, and basically everyone else on the face of the earth has been sued for this gambling, which is totally not gambling. In each of these cases, the tech companies have come out on top. One lawsuit against EA claimed the loot boxes amount of gambling was tossed out by a Canadian judge. But, there have been a lot of problems and a lot of concerns, and legislation has been written, and, yeah. So, yeah, in many of the cases, they came out on very technical wins, but, still raises some problems. These companies have also faced scrutiny worldwide because, unsurprisingly, gambling is not just regulated by US law. And every other country on the face of the earth would probably like to have a question with you when it comes to the not at all gambling involving the children. So, yeah. In one notable fight against this Epic Games was forced to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in fines for this. So, it's been a problem. Yeah, let's wrap this up. Thus, that brings us to the end of the latest of a saga of cases involving video game companies with the loot boxes, which is not at all gambling, even though it's totally gambling in every possible way. And they've also been sued over this every time for many, many years. Nintendo, like many companies, has abandoned the practice because, it faced a lot of scrutiny and a lot of concern. And also other regulators in other countries have taken a look at it, and it's been a problem. So, yeah, but they're still being sued over the time when they did this, and exploited the children. So how will this particular lawsuit go? Who knows? But it's the latest in a series of things, so it's going super well. And that brings us to the end of the discussion of this story.